Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey now, today we're going to take a look at the Stallion Canyon expansion for Flick 'em Up from Pretzel Games, which is a division of Philosophia and Z-Man Games. Now, Flick 'em Up, if you're not familiar with it, I'll have a little link somewhere at the top corner of your screen and down and below that will take you to my review of Flick 'em Up. It's an excellent dexterity game, but with a surprising amount of, strategy and tactics to it. It's almost like a tactical miniatures game with wooden bits and flicking of disc, where you are either lawmen or outlaws, and you are trying to defeat different scenarios, trying to either capture some of the other cowboys or get weapons and items, all these different types of things. There's tons of nice wooden bits and cardboard bits, and you're flicking bullet discs and using a movement disc, and there's just a lot of stuff in this very heavy wooden box that comes with the game. And now you have this expansion, the Stallion Canyon expansion, which, as it's right there in the title, you get horses and new canyon pieces, and a couple of other new pieces as well. And if you're wondering how this could possibly work with horses, better than you would expect, I will say. So let me go ahead and show you how all of that works. And I will say right up front that I know this is kind of weird because, as far as I know, it is still incredibly difficult to get the base game. The base game came out around Gen Con. They had some copies at Gen Con. A friend of mine picked mine up there. And there were some copies that came into some of the retail outlets like Cool Stuff and Miniatures Market, and they were gone. And to my knowledge, since then, still gone. Which I know is very weird and awkward, and I hope that people don't get upset like, oh, this guy's got the expansion and we don't even have the base game. And it is weird that they're making the expansion so available when the rest of the game is not actually available. I don't know what's up with that, but still, it will be available at some point, I'm assuming, I assure you. And I do think that it's a great game, and this is a good expansion. I'll go ahead and give you a spoiler now. So hopefully you'll watch it, and when the time comes, you'll be able to get all of it if you are so inclined. Anyways, let me show you all the stuff that's in the expansion. Then we're going to come back and let you know what I think. Alright, I'm going to give you a brief look at all the new stuff that comes in the Stallion Canyon expansion for Flick 'em Up. Now, what this expansion adds, of course, are horses, but that is not the only thing. There's a couple of other very interesting aspects to the game. Most of it brought about because of the horses. First and foremost, the expansion comes with this cool cloth bag, which they actually recommend you use to keep all of the wooden components in the game and put them into the main Flick 'em Up box. So just a cool little thing to have. There are a multitude of tokens here. You have lasso tokens, which of course are going to correspond to these actual lasso bits that you're going to use to try and fling out and catch wild horses. But this is, you have forbidden tokens, fire tokens for when dynamite sets something on fire, and of course the horse tokens. You also have this heads and tails horse flip token. The game also comes with these little elastic bands. Now, the elastic bands are going to be used to determine the domestic status, which sounds weird, of whether a horse has been domesticated or not, or whether it's a wild horse if it has one of these bands on it for both either the lawmen or for the outlaws. There's also two new characters in the game, two cowgirls, which I guess people were probably complaining about, and rightfully so, because I think every one of the characters from the original game was a dude. You have Anita and Laura, and they have their own figures as well, which I guess are supposed to be them wearing a dress. Okay, fair enough. So we'll be using these miniatures for our examples when I tell you about the horse mechanisms. And let's talk about those horses. So here they are. There's 4 different horses that come in the game in 4 different colors. And of course, the cowboy and cowgirl miniatures fit right on their back like so. There are also ramps. Now, it's interesting. The rulebook only discusses the ramps as if there's only one that they give you, but it came with 2. I don't know if everyone's comes with 2s or if mine was some sort of an error, but there you go. So these are going to be used to shoot into the air. We're going to cover all that in a moment. I just want to go over just what comes in the box first. Now, you have some new pieces of terrain here. You have 2 large canyon pieces, which are these things on the end. And yes, it does come with the wooden blocks for them. You don't need to keep swapping out and using the ones from the original set. And you have a stable and a hideout. Stable is obviously an area where you can go to in order to get horses that are already been domesticated. And actually, in some scenarios, you're going to have to keep track of the horses that you gather there, since you only have 4 horse miniatures, and that's where these horse tokens comes in. You're going to put them on the blocks there. A hideout for, obviously, when the outlaw scenarios. And then the 2 canyon pieces, which is the other part of the name of the expansion. These are kind of weird. Basically, they're like teleporters. They're supposed to simulate you traveling large distances in the game. So you actually go into them in the same way that you would move. And I'll have a movement disc. The expansion does not actually come with the movement disc, although I think that's an oversight. There really should be more of those by now. But in order to travel through the canyon, you have to shoot your disc all the way through the canyon itself to get to the other side. If you only partially go through the barrier, then you're considered still in the canyon. You still need to flick yourself all the way through to get to the other side. And by going to the other side, you're essentially coming out on where the other canyon is, which could be, as the rules describe, a whole other play area. Like, you could literally have 2 tables set up for the game, set up another scenario, or just set up another part of this whatever scenario you've created, and your cowboy will come out on the other side with the rest of the stuff on the other table. Or you can just set up both sides on the same table with the canyon separating them. And, of course, much like in the base game, there is an entire book of scenarios, and also, this time they combined the new rules for the expansion with all of the different scenarios, and, of course, it's in multiple languages. So it looks big and intimidating. It's really not. All of the new stuff is basically up to about here, and that's all the new stuff. In fact, I'll mention as well that in total there are 5 brand new main gameplay scenarios, but one cool thing that they did that I kind of wish the original had were practice scenarios. These are things that are just very, very simple things you can do to learn the new mechanisms of the game. So, for instance, the wild horses scenario is basically just capturing horses, and very simply just it teaches you the lasso mechanism, and I think it's a very good way to learn the game and all this new stuff. So let's talk about some of those new mechanisms, and first we'll talk about wild horses. So wild horses don't have a bridle on them, and depending on the scenario, and the lawmen and the outlaws can try and capture them. And how they're going to do that is with the lasso mechanism. So assuming they have lassos for the scenario, they'll have that token on their little player board, the player stock, or whatever you want to call it. And shooting the lasso works very similarly to firing a bullet. You put it, in fact, a bullet's length away from your character on the left or right, the same as you would for a bullet, and then you flick it in the same way that you would the bullet. And their goal is to try and do better than I just did there, and have the lasso get even just a little bit partially underneath one of the horses. You can't have it just like hit it. If it just hits it like this, like sideways, or like this, nothing happens. But if even part of the inner loop of the lasso gets underneath the legs of the horse, then you have successfully captured it. And depending on the scenario, different things will happen. Now, the cautious thing here is that, of course, you want to get as close as possible to try to have a better shot at hitting it with the lasso. But if you get too close, and in fact, if you get a horse's length away from the horse, it sort of bucks and it goes rears. Rears is the word I was looking for. And that's going to make it more difficult to lasso it, because if you try to lasso it and it gets knocked over, it's considered a failed attempt. So you kind of want to keep your distance if you can, at least for the most part. Now, in other scenarios where you have managed, where either you start the scenario with a bridle on it signifying that it's been domesticated, or where you have actually captured it yourself on a previous turn, something like that, it will have the bridle on it. I'm going to try to put this on the fly. It's kind of a tough thing. There you go. So there's its bridle. And now you have some different mechanisms that you can work with. Now you can actually mount the horse. Now to mount the horse, now you got to go back to the movement disc. And it's as weird as it sounds, but it actually does make a certain amount of sense. You can basically run up and mount the horse on the fly. In order to do that, you need to shoot the movement disc underneath its legs the same way you would as if you were trying to enter a building. So in other words, getting partially under it is enough for you to jump up onto it. So if this was how it would happen, I would be able to get right onto the horse. And getting off of the horse is actually done in the same way. So you would have put the movement disc back down and have to fire it down between the horse's legs. And if you're successful, you get to dismount wherever the movement disc ended up. Now, what are the benefits of being on a horse? That's the most important part, right? Well, movement works exactly the same. In other words, you'll pick up the horse, put the movement disc down, and shoot it. The difference, however, is that you get to do it twice for one action. So I'll put the disc down, shoot it, and then do it again, all as part of one action, because of course a horse is much faster, or so I've been told. And now you might ask, well, what happens if a cowboy or cowgirl is on a horse? What am I supposed to do then as an opponent of the other team? Well, that's where the ramps come into play, and this is one of my favorite things about the expansion, hard though it may be. You can attempt to shoot up a ramp and take out someone that's on a horse. Essentially, you are going to put the ramp a bullet's length away, as if the ramp was the bullet, and then put the bullet on it and fire it up and try to knock the person off the horse. This is obviously much easier said than done, but if you can knock someone off the horse, they are dismounted whether they like it or not, as well as taking a damage. And don't worry, because I actually was worried because I'm a sap like that. You don't kill horses in this game. You can't do that. They have no hit points. They'll never be... if they hit by a bullet, nothing happens. And unfortunately for these horses, either way, there's no way... Look at that! Boom! Got them! It's really hard to do, but but it's all about getting the hang of it. But really, that's it. I mean, that's the whole thing. I will mention, and just as a word of warning, because my table's already been through the ringer, so it doesn't really matter, but in at least a couple of the scenarios, especially one of the practice scenarios, it requires you to flick the horses themselves by going boom and sending them into a corral. That could damage your table. They're pretty heavy wood. Again, I don't care about my table so much, but I suppose that is worth a word of warning. That is essentially all the stuff that, or at least most of the stuff that comes in the Stallion Canyon expansion for Flick 'em Up. Now, let's get to my final thoughts. Lots of fun stuff here. I mean, the idea of the horses, I mean, it's a great idea, but you're like, how could that possibly be implemented? And it's implemented very well. And I know that the horses look weird, but really no weirder than any of the other bits and pieces that have come in the game. This has a unique look and style to it that is like nothing else. And I know that my table leaves a lot to be desired, but when you have this set up at like a gaming store, and you've got like the whole big nice thing going on, and you use all the bits and pieces, and you've got lots of players involved, this game is like a spectacle, and it's amazing. And now you've got horse pieces to add into that. It's great. And it's not just the fact that they look cool. It plays very well, too. The idea of lassoing them, the idea of having them domesticated and then being able to mount them on the fly using the movement disc. I do wish they would finally put more movement discs in the game, but okay, whatever. As this little aside gripe about it. And then the whole thing with... shooting with the ramp. Now, that is very difficult, at least for me. I'm terrible at this game. I totally admit that. But so other people had an easier time with it. But the fact that it's there, it's so cool that you can shoot up a ramp to shoot people off. Everything in this game is thematic. As silly as it is, it's not like serious thematics. It's so cool that all these things work in tandem, and flicking the lasso and being able to wrangle these horses is just so neat. It just is. It's fun. It's so quirky fun. It makes you feel like a kid again, but in the best kind of way, because again, just like with the base game, there's a surprising amount of tactics here. Like, which one do you which lawman or cowboy do you activate, and or outlaw do you activate, and where do we move to? What's the best angle to get at this thing, and to complete our objectives? There's a lot of decision making in the game, and not to just rehash what I talked about in my original review, but tying it together with this expansion, it's even more options and more things you have to worry about, and more stuff to add more depth to the game. The idea of the canyons is very cool. Some of the scenarios require it, and it's as simple as like, this very small section is completely cut off from the rest of the board. No one can just like go in there easily. But sometimes it's a major thing, like it requires you to, if you want to do a scenario, it's to have 2 whole tables worth of stuff, which is really epic. Not for everybody, I'm sure. Most people, or a lot of people, at least want to play very simple scenarios for this game, and that's fine. But to have that option is great. So I think that's a really good addition. And to have other different buildings, and you have the 2 female characters, which are overdue. I know, it doesn't necessarily make the most thematic sense that there'd be a lot of women cowboys, but there were some. And I'm sure that this is their reaction to like, hey, we should have had those in the base game. And kudos to them for actually finally doing something about it. So it's cool to have those and to have new miniatures for them. And I don't know, I think this is just a solid expansion. If you were lucky enough to get the base game, and it will be available eventually, I'm sure. I'm sorry for anyone who wasn't able to get it and who really keeps hearing this game getting hyped and feels bad about it. But the base game is good. The expansion is good. It's just a solid, fun game. And I always look for unique games and unique expansions for games. This has it in spades. That is the Stallion Canyon expansion for Flick 'em Up from Pretzel Games. Highly recommend it. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.